Now, because of the net loading problems, so I have decided to divide this video into different parts just to make it easy for you to load in your own phone or in the computer. Now, as we have said, the first criterion is the morphological criterion. However, the morphological criterion is only suggestive, it is not inclusive. Yani we cannot depend entirely on the morphological criterion because there are so many complications and problems in the morphological criterion. So now we talk about the complications in the morphological criterion. First of all, we talk about the irregular nouns. Yani here, for example, here, if we talk about nouns, first problem is that we cannot entirely depend on the morphological criterion because of the irregularity of nouns. Some nouns are irregular, like sheep, fish, deer, etc. And the second problem is relevant to mass nouns. You mean by mass nouns, uncountable nouns. So, for example, here a word like furniture cannot be pluralized. That is why we cannot depend entirely on the inflection, for example, here, on morphology. But the third main problem or complication in the morphological criterion is that sometimes we have noun expressions. And we have phrases, for example, here. In the noun expressions, as in these examples, only the head can be pluralized, as in car doors, or coat hangers, or horse boxes. The verbs, for example, here also have other types or kinds of complications, especially in the inflection. For example, not all verbs are inflected to the third person singular, the ing form, or the present participle, past and past participle. And the number of inflected forms are also different. For example, here, if we talk about verbs to be in general have 8 inflectional forms. Be, this is the base or the infinitive, and then am, is, are, the present, was, were in the past, and then we have being, the ing, and been. The other problem also in the inflection of verbs is relevant or is confined to the what is called defective verbs, or sometimes even verbs of sensation. A verb like beware, this one cannot take ing, or for example verbs of sense or verbs of state, for example like own, nobody can say owning, nobody can say, for example, understanding. So if we depend on the inflection only, or we cannot get a comprehensive criterion in order to settle or to decide to which category a word belongs. For all these complications, for all these reasons, linguists in general or grammarians appeal to the syntactic criterion, or sometimes called the distributional criterion, as another evidence here. So I mean by the syntactic criterion, or how does it operate, is that different categories of words have different distributions and they occupy different range of positions within phrases or sentences. Each word in a sentence, even each phrase in a sentence, occupies a certain position within a sentence. It could be a main verb, it could be a determiner, it could be an intensifier, it could be subject complement, and so on and so forth. So in order to support this evidence or this criterion, let's talk about this example. So in a sentence like they have no dash, for example, here, in this position, this one, only certain types of categories, of words, only now certain types of noun can fill this blank or this gap. So we can say, for example, they have no car, they have no friends, they have no ideas. But nobody can fill this blank or this gap, for example, with a verb, neither with a preposition, neither with an adjective, neither with an adverb, and so on and so forth. Another example which illustrates the distributional criterion, for example, here, only a verb in the infinitive form can occur in the position of the following sentence. They or it can dash, for example, here. So we can only fill this gap, for example, by a verb, because a modal verb should be followed by an infinitive. Say they can stay, they can leave, they can work, they can read, they can write, they can hide, and so on. The other example is that only adjectives or adverbs follow an intensifier. An intensifier, adverbs like very, extremely, awfully. Here, for example, when we say he is very, we can say he is very slow, or he walks very slowly, but not very fast. Very those intensifiers usually intensify or modify adjectives and adverbs. So if we think of the syntactic distribution or criterion here, it might be helpful in order to identify the grammatical category or the class of a certain word. Another example here to support the syntactic criterion, only adjectives can serve as complement to the verb. For example, verb to be, they are very tall, they are very pretty, they are very kind, they are very nice. But not they have very slowly, or they are very gentlemen, or they are very working, and so on and so forth. Another example for the distribution, we'll talk to this point. We'll talk about this point. We'll move to this point. So here only prepositions can be intensified by right, or by straight. Right here in the sense or in the meaning of completely, or straight in the meaning of directly. So as in these two examples, go right up the ladder, go right up. So here we can decide that up is from the distribution, from the position where it occurs. It is a preposition because it is intensified by right. The same thing for he felt straight down. So simply you can identify that down is a preposition because it can be preceded by straight. However, other categories of words, other parts of speech cannot be intensified by right and straight, as in these examples. For instance, nobody can say you right or straight the spirit, where the spirit here is a verb. Neither nobody can say she is right or straight pretty, because pretty and an adjective cannot be preceded by right and straight. And also nobody can say they are right or straight fools, because fools is a plural, which is a noun here, and so on and so forth. So once again, through these examples, we have explained that each word and each class or each category of words occupy certain positions, and depending on the syntactic distribution or on the distributional criterion, we can identify the grammatical status of a word.